Hey, welcome to the 40 Finance channel, investors. Today I'm going to be doing my semiconductor stock projections for 2022. These are the price projections for, I think we've got 8 big chip names on the board. So 8 price projections for the end of 2022 for some of the biggest chip stocks in the industry. If you're new to the channel, I use a very fundamental analysis model, just trying to project ahead on earnings per share and PE ratio or valuation multiple. And for this, we're always looking ahead. So we use the forward versions. I do make my own modifications based on a company's recent history in terms of hitting their numbers, as well as from a valuation standpoint. I typically go back a few years in valuation multiples and try to figure out where a stock tends to land in the season. And for this season, we of course would be looking in that December, January time frame later this year. Okay, before we jump into the individual stocks, let's take a look at the SOXX Semiconductor ETF. This gives us a pretty good idea on which way this industry is trending right now on the market. This is a 1-year view. I'm going to zoom in real quick on the year to date. And right off the bat, you can see we had a crossover on the 50 down under the 200-day moving average. But most importantly for me, when I try to make these price assessments so far into the future, I'm trying to get a feel for how hot the market is right now. So at least on the SOXX, we are showing an RSI of about 53, 54, somewhere in that range. And if we go back to the last major dip, we saw an RSI of 36. And I'm not sure if we're going to see any high points this year. But when it was back in the 545 range, it looks like the RSI was about 59 or 60. So I guess overall, if you look at it, down a little bit today, but back on 329, you actually had an RSI of 61. So the market isn't like mega hot over the 70 mark or anything like that, but it's definitely trending upward from here. And that gives us a little bit of a guide for how we're going to look at our multiple projections. Let's kick things off here with AMD as our first stock. Trading at 111.58. You can see year to date, you're down 25% if you're in AMD. But you got an EPS looking forward of $4.04. The forward PE right now is 29.49. All right, let's take a look at our earnings estimates here in SeekingAlpha. By the way, if you are interested in SeekingAlpha, my affiliate link is in the description, gets you a nice discount on a full year of their premium service. Definitely check that out. But as we go down here to our EPS estimates on an annual basis, December of 2022, that's when this current fiscal year will end for AMD, coming in at about 404 on the estimate as of now. Now, I'm projecting a price at the end of December, maybe bleeding into January a little bit. So all eyes are really going to be on December of 2023. That's why it's important to keep into consideration how the forward PE would change, because that's entirely where my metrics are going to be based on. Okay, so for most of these companies, we're going to be looking into the next fiscal period to try to project the future, at least what it would look like in December. So in December of 2023, current estimates right now, $4.83. That'd be growth of 19.59%. And it would give you a forward PE looking 2 years out, if you will, of 24.66. Now, we also have revenue estimates on this page. It doesn't factor too much into what I do because these are such mega cap companies. However, it does give us a little bit of a feel for how the momentum might shift, trying to get a feel for, what is 2023 looking like compared to 2022. And you can see for AMD, if they hit $25 billion this year, huge growth. Plus 55%. If they hit their estimate next year at $29 billion, the growth slows down slightly to 14%. So we'll keep that in mind when we think about our valuation multiple. All right, so here's my first price projection. AMD, today is March 31st, currently trading at 113, at least when I type this in. I think it's down to 111. Forward PE of 29, forward EPS as they sit today, $4.04. I'm looking out to December of 2022. My target price is 169 from this level, and I gave it a forward PE of 35, which is higher than its current. And I gave it the EPS based on the 2023 metrics, and I also rounded that up just a little bit based on AMD's past performance. So 35 times 485 gives you a target price in my world of 169. That is a potential, if these numbers were to hit, of course, of plus 49% for AMD heading into the last days of December. Okay, going back to Seeking Alpha here. Let's look at Intel for stock number 2, $50.57 as of today. And if you follow Intel, this one's going to be a little interesting because, in my opinion, the bull case is not 2022. Okay, the bull case for Intel is 2024, 2025, and in the short term, of course, you get a nice dividend. But as of today, we've got forward EPS of 344. PE, forward PE, just under 15. And a note about that dividend, which I should probably call out for all these stocks because a lot of chip stocks have dividends, so I'll try to remember to do that. But in this case, it's 2.84% on today's price, which is obviously very generous. All right, let's look at our estimates. And this graph kind of tells the tale that I was portraying. You've got a few years out for this curve to work itself and just receive the dividends in the short term, I guess. But for December of 2022, $3, which is actually negative growth year over year. We will, however, be looking at December of 2023. So the sentiment there will definitely be different for Intel. And they're back to single-digit growth on the EPS side if all these chips fall into place, right? So 320 current estimate, that would be a forward PE of 16 at today. Looking at revenue, this year 76 billion, that's about 1% on the growth line. And for 2023, at least right now, you got about 79 billion. That would be an additional 4% growth if they hit that number by the end of 2023. Now for my stock projection on Intel, currently at $50. Looking ahead to December again, I've got a target price of only 52. Okay, and that's pretty easy to figure out. I'm keeping my forward PE the same at 15 of where it is today, so no real changes there. I did give them a minor boost on forward EPS to 350. They have typically outperformed on the EPS line, though just by a little bit. So bottom line for me, you've got about a 4% upside for Intel from the $50 mark. However, keep in mind that dividend for your total stock return. Now let's take a look at Micron, MU, trading at 79.13 as I speak. Year to date, you're minus 17% on Micron. EPS forward, 962. PE forward is 823. You do get a small dividend, 0.25% on today's price. And keep in mind with Micron, they're not a designer chip manufacturer, right? Just the nature of the type of chips that Micron produces, there's just not a lot of room for premium branding. Nobody really cares. Like you would see maybe with Nvidia GPUs. There's just no room for that in the memory chip world. Taking a look at our earnings estimates here in Seeking Alpha, you got August of 2022. So their fiscal year ends a little bit earlier than the other ones. Everybody else's fiscal 3. So by August of 2022, we'll know if they're about to hit this number of 962, which would be a forward PE of 823. But somewhere after this Q4 report for them, which I'm going to guess is in and around September, people will already be looking at August of 2023, and the EPS estimate right now is pretty substantial boost 31% up to 1262. Now on the revenue side, 21% growth this year, $33 billion or so. And then next year, they could add another 20% to that at $40 billion. So Micron certainly going in the right direction. Again, it's just not a sexy name because you don't see their technology in many places, retail stores and whatnot. All right, so MU in my book, again, today's March 31st, we're at $79. Looking ahead to December, my target is 115. That gives them a tiny boost to forward PE of 9 over the current 8. But the EPS line, that's a huge number on the EPS line, growing by 30%. So you multiply these together, you get 115. That's a potential 45% upside if these projections were to come true. All right, next up is Broadcom. This is a company that is really hot right now. And you can see on their year-to-date chart, they're barely down 4% for this year. So sentiment with Broadcom is high, and I have to factor that into my price target. On the PE side, you got almost an 18 looking ahead. Huge EPS of $35.51. That's obviously represented in a huge stock price. But let's take a look at what the estimates are for Broadcom. And this is one where the fiscal year ends in October. So very similar to Micron, except just a couple months later. So right now, if they hit their EPS of $35.51, that would be plus 26% growth, forward PE of 1777. We're going to be looking for 2023, and I guess that we'd officially be switched over on 2023 numbers for this one by, certainly around Thanksgiving time. And you've got an EPS estimate next year, though. It's only a 9% gain, $38.79. Now, on the revenue estimates, you've got $32 billion this fiscal year, plus 16% growth. But next year, in 2023, at least where it stands now, you're at $34 billion, and that drops you to single digits into 6% growth. All right, my view on Broadcom. We're at 635 with an 18 forward PE. Looking ahead to December, I'm actually bringing that down. So kind of like I alluded to, I think Broadcom's very hot right now, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the hotter you are, the more room you have to fall from a multiple perspective. I did give them benefit of the doubt on the EPS and moved it up a couple notches to $39.50. But this price here, $592, losing this valuation multiple, even though it's only 3 points, did have a significant impact on the price. And I'm calling minus 6% from here heading into December. Real quick, too, I forgot to call it. So while I'm saying minus 6% on Broadcom, keep in mind they have a healthy dividend as well. And I should have mentioned that. 2.56% on a $637 stock price is impressive, and SeekingAlpha projects that to land at about $16.40. So it's not always stock price, especially when you're talking about long-term and getting dividends like this. Okay, next one is Nvidia, and I just covered this in my FAANG price projection, so I'm just going to speed through it real quick. Year to date on Nvidia, you're minus 7%. EPS looking ahead, 563, forward PE of 49, and you do get a small 0.06% dividend rate on this one. Let's look at earnings projections. This one is going to be a little bit different because their fiscal calendar doesn't end until the first part of 2023 at the end of January. So my price target on this is actually, because we're talking about December, I'm sticking right in here on January 2023 because I'm calling this at the end of 2022. It won't be long though before they're looking at this. So it makes my Nvidia price projection a little bit dicey since I'm actually trying to target the end of 2022. But you see we got 563 on the estimate, 27% growth on the bottom line for Nvidia. Now for consistency on Nvidia, I'm keeping my projection from the FAANG video, which was 328. Current price 274, forward PE to 49, forward EPS of 563. I'm coming in with a lower forward PE on Nvidia. So 49, I'm dropping it down to 40, just based on the fact that I think sentiment is very high for Nvidia right now, and it has traded in the 40s consistently, actually, across history. Now, it goes up and down every quarter, obviously, but I'm choosing 40. We'll see what happens. I did round them up on the EPS side, but 60 times 40 is 240, and at least right now, that's a minus 12% through the end of the year for Nvidia. Now, keep in mind, because there's a lot of people asked about it on the FAANG video, Nvidia is a very popular stock, and I'm basically coming in here and chopping $34 off. First of all, this is just my fundamental projection. At any time, the market could increase their multiple. It's sitting at 49 right now, right? So there will be investors who are willing to pay $49.50 for Nvidia. Will they have enough of them to push that valuation up across the market? We'll have to see. But if this changes to 50, it's a relatively easy math here, 50 times 6 is a price of 300 for Nvidia based off the same EPS projections, which I feel pretty good about that part. So I'm going lowball on Nvidia, but just to be fair, it can go the other way just as easily. All right, next up we got TSM, Taiwan Semiconductor. This is a stock that I owned and loved, but as we got closer to that war situation over in Ukraine, I was getting spooked by what China might do, so I did end up selling out. I still made a profit after being in it for a year and a half, something like that. But right now you sit at 105, which is conceivably a deal for TSM. But let's take a look. EPS, 552. P right now just under 20 at 1935. You see down lower we have our dividend yield, 1.8%, works out to about $1.92 according to SeekingAlpha. Checking in on our estimates on the EPS side. This year, standard fiscal calendar, you see the December, 552. Next year, projected at 626. That would be 13% growth, slowing down from the year prior at 33.91%. Revenue side, December of 2022, you've got $70 billion at plus 22. And in 2023, if they hit this number, they would grow about 18% up to $83 billion. So double-digit top and bottom line growth for TSM. That's why I love this stock. Just couldn't take it anymore, though, with all the stuff that's been going on in China, with the stock market, and then you threw in the war. And for me, it just wasn't worth the risk that it would tank out of nowhere. But, fundamentally, you're going to struggle to poke holes in anything that TSM's doing. It's a great business as long as you can handle the sort of government-type pressure that could come on it at any minute. All right, so my world here, we're at 106, 19 forward PE, 552 on the forward EPS as of today. I'm looking ahead to December. I've got 130 on the target price. That does boost the forward PE by a point. And then we add about $1 to the EPS because we'll be looking ahead to 2023. So if you take 20 times 650, you got a price of 130. That does not include the dividend. It's an upside of 22% in my book, assuming that, of course, political problems don't lower the valuation multiple. All right, how about Qualcomm, QCOM? You're at 154 or so today. EPS of 1185, forward PE of about 13. This one has a 1.96% yield looking ahead. Works out to be about $3 according to SeekingAlpha. Checking in on earnings estimates. This is another one that the year ends in fall or September. So you got 1185 this year, 38% growth on the bottom line, which is outstanding, for PE of 1288. Now, looking ahead next year, we see that maybe the bottom line is slowing a little bit, plus 6% to 1258. So you see there's not much movement next year in the forward PE. It doesn't mean that they're doing bad, it's just not this epic run that they've had in 2022. On the revenue side, 26% growth if they hit 42.4 billion this year. Next year, though, right now, analysts are saying slower. So you get back to single digits. So this is a good example of a common theme in chips right now, okay? 2022 looks solid. At least analysts and forecasters don't have as much confidence in next year, not to the tune of double digits, top and bottom line for a lot of these companies. So that's what you got to look out for when you're doing these projections, is try to figure out, what is the sentiment for next year? And you really have to go industry specific. Right now with chips, it looks like a good year, right? Growth, not reduction. They are still going to grow, just not at the same pace. Okay, we got Qualcomm at 155 today, 13 forward PE, 1185 is the current forward EPS. I'm giving them a small boost of 1 point on the valuation multiple to 14. And my EPS calculation, I did pad it some because they have historically outperformed over the past, 8 to 10 quarters. So 14 times 1322, I've got a price of 185. It's actually 19% upside from where we sit today. This is going to be the big number, though, because I am projecting them to outperform expectations. And, that needs to become more crystal clear as we head into the last days of December in order for this projection to work out. Okay, last stock on the board is Texas Instruments, TXN. You're at 186 today. Forward EPS of 920. Forward PE of 2037. Pretty solid dividend yield, 2.45% on today's price. Projected at $4.60 looking ahead the next 12 months. On our earnings projections, December of 2022, so standard fiscal calendar, 920 this year. Not much growth there, 8%, certainly compared to some of the other faster growing companies we saw. And then this year, 2023, you get down to low single digits, and you can see how plus, 2.6% looks compared to the year before. It's definitely conservative at this point. On the revenue side, plus 8.5% growth, $19 billion. Next year, they're going to look to cross into the 20 plus billion, but that is less than 5% growth on the top line. Okay, in my view, Texas Instruments, 187 today, 24 PE, 920 on the forward EPS. I'm giving them the same forward PE, which is 20, and I moved their EPS up a couple notches from the current estimate. They do have a good track record of slightly outperforming expectations, so 20 times 9.92 gives you a price of 198 if those things were to materialize, and that is plus 6% from today, plus, of course, you get the dividend as well. All right, now putting this all together, so I'm a huge fan of the QQQ. If you haven't watched my channel, that is something that I am monitoring closely and buying into when I see opportunities. But right now, if we took the collective of all these stocks and we put the price together, it would come out to $15.99, one share of each. Then if I go over to my target price, and I do the same thing, you're coming in at $16.81. So while this is upside across the sector, I still only have it at 5%. And the big question mark, of course, is going to be Nvidia, which I surprisingly have at minus double digits for Nvidia. So we'll have to see if that materializes. Now, if everything else hit, and then we saw Nvidia outperform, then chips look pretty good right now at the current prices. My initial take, at least when we looked at the SOXX ETF, is that, probably not the best day to buy chip stocks if you're looking, strictly on valuation. Definitely want to see the prices come down just a little bit with all the uncertainty out there. So that's my take overall. You got about plus 5% on today's prices through the end of the year. If you don't follow the chip sector, I can tell you that it is consistently up and down. It's waves across the board, high points, low points. When you've got an RSI trending in the 60s or even 70s, it's usually a good time to pause as far as buying and wait for it to trend back down. There's always going to be a news headline that impacts chip stock. So if you want to buy for the long term, which I think is a great investment, just wait for the negative headlines to come out and do some DCA at that time. All right, guys, let me know what you think about my price projections for the chip sector. Let me know which stocks you have coming in higher or lower perhaps than I do through the end of this year. And before you go, make sure you check out that SeekingAlpha special offer in the description. And as always, please give the video a like, share with your friends. Appreciate your support very much. We will see you on the next video.